Under the dense canopy of the rainforest, dawn's first pale strands of light stirred bright green leaves. Macaws called from the treetops, their squawks echoing through the humid air. The heavy fragrance of nocturnal blossoms clung to the drifting mists, reminding the forest of its hidden wonders yet to be revealed. As the sun rose, far in the distance, hidden by twisting vines and towering kapok trees, lay a vast stone city that once thrived with vibrant festivals and offerings to mighty deities. A faint breeze carried the ghostly sound of a flute-like melody from the city's core, a composition so ancient that it was said to predate the very stones stacked upon one another to form the towering pyramids. In the hush, the jungle seemed to hold its breath, as if preparing for the revival of a destiny foretold long ago, a destiny that revolved around a serpent's song. Ixchel, a keen-eyed young woman with her hair braided intricately around her head, first heard the elusive melody at the edge of the city's deserted courtyard. Raised by her grandfather, the local historian, she spent her days poring over stone carvings and delicate codices to piece together fragments of the empire's past. Since childhood, Ixchel had pled with the gods for a sign, convinced that something extraordinary lay dormant beneath the cracked foundations of her homeland. Now, in the weakening light of day, she felt the gentle pulse of that hidden force echo against her own heartbeat. She sensed that a powerful prophecy was unfolding, though she did not yet know it would test her convictions and reshape the future of her people. Every dawn, the young historian made her way through the abandoned avenues, weaving past crumbling pillars and carved stelae. The labyrinthine city, once a thriving hub of artistry and commerce, now existed in a state of suspended ruin. Vines snaked through ornamental arches, while tree roots claimed the stone steps that once led to mighty temples. Ixchel's task was to salvage what relics she could, transcribing glyphs before the jungle reclaimed them entirely. Sometimes she ran her fingertips over faint chiseled lines, nearly eroded by time, struggling to decode the final words of lost kings and queens. Other days, she discovered new carvings that hinted at the unity and majesty this empire once knew. Still, she also found records of nightmares, serpents, tail-coiled among the cosmos, and a song whose melody could either heal or destroy. Her current efforts were directed toward deciphering one particular codex housed in the old palace archive. Each page of worn bark paper displayed vibrant paintings of ceremonial gatherings and swirling plumes of incense. A repeated motif of a coiled snake silhouette dominated the illustrations, present so central it appeared with each turning of the page. The glyphs around every image followed patterns of warning and veneration in equal measure. They hinted that, across centuries, the empire once sought the keys to an ancient prophecy, prophesied to reshape the balance of power, not just for one city, but for all realms scattered across the jungle. Through cryptic metaphor, the codex warned that a serpent's voice could either unite the scattered tribes under a single banner or bring cataclysmic ruin. As Ixchel slowly translated the glyphs, careful not to tear the fragile pages, she discovered references to a hidden chamber deep beneath the central pyramid. Local legend referred to this place in hushed tones, calling it the Chamber of Hearts. According to the codex, a sacred serpent, addressed as Mukok, meaning the divine voice, slumbered in timeless stasis there. When awakened, Mukok would sing. Its song was described as a piercing new dawn that could tear open the veil separating the mortal world from the realm of gods. Standing on shaky ground between wonder and dread, Ixchel felt compelled to enter that hidden labyrinth. She could not resist the gravitational pull of the serpent's promise. The city and its people needed a miracle to reclaim their identity, or else they would fade from memory altogether. Spreading out her notes, Ixchel summoned courage and approached the city's ruling council. They met in the half-collapsed assembly hall, a space thick with shadows and dimly lit by torches. 7 elders in embroidered cotton robes listened, expressions guarded. Most of them lived in relative isolation since farmland was distant and the population had shrunk drastically, but they still held onto their roles with rigid devotion. With every sentence, Ixchel struggled to steady her voice. She described the codex's contents, the prophecy of Mukawuk, the labyrinth, and the possibility that awakening the Serpent could either unify their realm or finish its decline. Doubt and alarm flickered across the elders' faces. Many whispered that toying with unknown magic was reckless. Yet one man with silver-white hair, seated at the far end of the hall, raised his staff in a gesture for silence. Slowly, the old man revealed himself as Chakte, the last living descendant of the city's once powerful royal family. Although he had never officially ascended the throne, the city still looked to his lineage with reverence. Chakte's voice carried the weight of authority. "For centuries," he said, "we heard rumors of a serpent that could heal or destroy. We dismissed them as children's tales, but I suspect the final threads of this prophecy are weaving themselves before us. Ixchel, if you are prepared to walk this path, I will help you gather what you need to proceed. But know this, if the serpent awakens in wrath instead of mercy, the tragedies we have endured so far will pale in comparison to what you unleash." The elders agreed to let Ixchel lead a small expedition to the central pyramid, an imposing structure whose summit soared above the treetops. Accompanying her were two individuals, the stoic warrior Tokoban, a veteran from the city's once proud guard, and Nima, an herbalist who served the community with quiet resolve. Chakte provided them with a single obsidian dagger etched with ancestral glyphs, believed to have been blessed by the city's founding deities. He entrusted them with words of caution and hope. Their mission was to find the hidden passage leading to the Chamber of Hearts, attempt to awaken Mukawuk, and if possible, ask for its healing song so the Empire might find rebirth. Nightfall saw them setting off under the glow of moonlight, crossing courtyards where the chipped faces of old statues watched in silent vigil. The jungle, never truly silent, played a symphony of chirps, hoots, and distant howls. Ixchel gripped the codex close to her heart, mindful of how the starlight revealed subtle symbols on its cover. She pushed unease to the back of her thoughts. Fear would do them little good in the labyrinth of the pyramid. Every vine-shrouded archway felt like an omen. Yet she pressed forward, determined to find answers hidden within the ancient stone. The grand staircase leading up the pyramid was treacherous, many steps chipped and encroached upon by creeping moss. At the summit, a large ceremonial platform greeted them, with broken altars and crumbling pillars. Ixchel paused, scanning the glyphs inscribed around the edges, searching for mention of a secret entrance. Tokoban wordlessly tested the ground with the butt of his spear. Meanwhile, Nima closed her eyes and breathed in the faint aroma of night-blooming jasmine, an herb she believed guided lost souls. At last, under a relief depicting a cosmic serpent bridging heaven and earth, Ixchel discovered the faint outline of a door. She ran her fingers across the groove, and as she pressed, the ancient mechanism groaned. A slab of stone slid aside, revealing a narrow passage that descended into the pyramid's core. Their torchlight flickered against the dark, stifling corridor. With little hesitation they ventured inside, leaving behind moonlight and the calls of nocturnal birds. The tunnel was close and winding, with walls adorned by more serpentine carvings. Occasional alcoves revealed half-intact jade statues. A persistent trickle of water, seeping through cracks in the stone, gave the air a cool dampness. The deeper they descended, the more oppressive the silence became. Every footstep, every breath reverberated back. At times the floor seemed to shift beneath them, as if the corridors themselves held restless spirits. To quell her mounting anxiety, Ixchel quietly recited fragments of old prayers taught by her grandfather, appealing for divine guidance in the labyrinth. Eventually, they reached a circular chamber, decorated with swirling motifs reminiscent of wind and water. At the center stood a cylindrical pedestal, carved with rows of glyphs that twined around it like vines. Ixchel crouched and placed the codex on the pedestal's top. With one hand, she traced the lines of text that had led them here. She spoke in a hushed tone. "The codex says that the serpent lives beyond the next threshold. This room is a test. If we fail to unlock it properly, the path will remain closed forever. Nima stepped forward, producing from her pouch a carefully wrapped bunch of plants. She whispered, "I brought these. Various incenses used in rituals. Perhaps it wants an offering." Tokaban walked the perimeter, noticing tall shutters carved into the walls. "Incense might not be enough," he said, eyes scanning for switches or hidden levers. "Sometimes gates answer to voice and movement. Let's see if the codex or these glyphs mention a specific ritual." Together, they studied the inscriptions more intently. Ixchel discovered repeated references to a dance known as the Steps of Renewal, a ceremonial movement performed to honor the Serpent deity. It involved rhythmic footfalls matched to a drum-like pattern, as if one's steps created an echo that awakened sleeping energies. The instructions even included references to a specific chant that had to accompany the movements. Catching each other's eyes, they recognized they would have to enact the dance themselves. Setting their torch aside, Nima lit a bundle of incense, filling the chamber with fragrant curls of copal smoke. The three formed a loose circle around the pedestal and began the chant. Guided by Ixchel's recollection of storage house glyphs that documented ancient ceremonial songs, their voices, hesitant at first, rose in mania and pitch until they moved their feet in harmony, echoing the instructions carved in stone. A subdued tremor rippled across the floor. The shutters in the walls juddered open. Glowing streams of subterranean bioluminescent mushrooms slid into view, casting faint teal light. The pedestal sank, and from beneath it, a wide corridor revealed itself, slanting deeper into the pyramid. Heartbeats racing, they stepped forward toward this newly opened path. The corridor led to a vast cavern. Impressionistic murals of a feathered serpent soared across the walls, each brushstroke capturing the swirl of cosmic clouds around its sinuous body. At the center of the cavern lay a raised platform, an altar of luminous onyx, ringed by 8 columns carved into the shapes of coiled snakes. Every column wore a different expression, some fierce, some serene, others appearing to be singing. Above the platform, the stone ceiling curved like a dome, studded with crystals inlaid in the patterns of constellations. The air itself felt heavier, almost electric. Tokaban guided their torch closer, revealing what lay upon the raised onyx slab. A massive serpent. Jade scales shimmering even in the dim firelight was coiled there, asleep. Its eyelids were closed, yet behind them, the faintest flicker of movement hinted at a presence that was neither fully in slumber nor truly awake. The serpent's body was covered in symbols that matched those scattered across the codex's pages, as though it belonged to both the mortal realm and something else entirely. Ixchel's voice faltered. "Mukok," she whispered, the name resonating in her mouth. She took careful steps toward the platform, each movement slow and deliberate, uncertain whether her approach might rouse the serpent in hostility. Her heart hammered. She pictured the stakes, the city on the brink of collapse, the prophecy's dire warnings, and the chance for rebirth if they succeeded. Nima and Tokaban held back, poised to act at the first sign of danger. With trembling hands, Ixchel unclasped the codex and turned its fragile pages until she reached the incantation described as the summoning of voices. The characters warned that once begun, the invocation had to be completed with absolute resolve. Even the slightest hesitation could twist the serpent's mood. Closing her eyes, Ixchel steadied her breath, then lifted her voice in a gentle chant. Her voice wove through the cavern, amplified by the acoustics that carried echoes from floor to dome. Tendrils of copal smoke drifted around the serpent's coiled body, forming soft spirals. Then, ever so gradually, the serpent's massive lids slid open to reveal an iridescent yellow eye. Mukuk began to uncoil, each scale rasping quietly against the stone. The serpent lifted its head, crown crest gleaming under the torchlight. A wave of energy rippled through the air, and Ixchel found herself gazing into that ancient eye which seemed to hold celestial storms. The chant hovered in the chamber's echo, uncertain, waiting for an answer. Then the serpent sang. Its voice was unlike anything mortal ears had heard. It soared in a scale too vast, too resonant to be purely physical, weaving tangibly through the unwinding corridors of existence. Each note shimmered with possibility and threatened to fracture reality. Ixchel's mouth fell open in awe as she felt the power of it course through her limbs. Joy and terror bled together in a crescendo that gripped her heart. Yet, within the serpent's melody, a subtle undercurrent hinted at doubt or confusion. As though Mukuuk searched for guidance, Ixchel remembered the prophecy. The serpent could heal or destroy. She realized that the fate of her city would hinge on how they channeled this awakened force. Her knees nearly buckled as she called out, "Mukru, divine voice, in the name of our ancestors and those yet to come, we implore you to see our intentions. Our people are scattered, lost. Let your song guide us to unity, not devastation." The serpent's eyes glowed brighter, a swirling intensity that seemed to swirl with star-like glimmers. Another pulse of its voice surged, rattling the columns and shaking dust from the dome. Tokaban, alarmed, braced himself. Nima sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face at the exquisite beauty and terrifying power of the serpent's music. And then it happened. The serpent's melody fractured. A second voice, dissonant and sharp, cut through the chamber, as if an unseen force tugged at the snake's essence. Ixchel reeled in shock. The Codex had hinted that if corruption had tainted the land, the serpent's power could be twisted into ruin. Did the Empire's centuries of decline, political betrayal, or dishonored rights come to weigh on this moment? The serpent writhed, torn between two harmonies, one sweet and redemptive, the other chaotic and destructive. Hairline cracks rippled through the onyx platform. The columns vibrated, their expressions warping in the flickering darkness. Ixchel's heart pounded. This was the decision point. The prophecy was in motion. The question was which half of the serpent's nature would prevail. Desperate to counteract the discord, Ixchel raised her voice, arrayed with every ounce of faith she possessed. She remembered her grandfather's stories of the old times, when the city was vibrant, ruled by balanced energies of sky and earth. She recalled the tales of holy rites performed with honest hearts. Drawing upon that memory, she sang a new chant, weaving words of gratitude, humility, and harmony. Nima rose and joined in, offering an herbalist's simpler prayer. Tokaban, though less familiar with ceremonial incantations, clenched his spear and said reassuring words that echoed devotion to the city he once guarded. Something in their combined pleas resonated with the serpent. Mukuuk froze mid-writhe, the dissonant chord sputtering, overshadowed by the group's prayerful call. The serpent slowly stretched out, and the chaotic hum dissipated into gentle aftershocks. The brilliant glow in Mukuuk's eyes softened, no longer swirling with cosmic storms, but glimmering with clarity. A calmer, wholly integrated melody reverberated through the cavern. It was an anthem of compassion, an ancient lullaby that soothed battered hopes. At that moment, Ixchel felt an ethereal presence envelop her, as though time and space collapsed into the single note thrumming in her bones. She saw visions, the city's temples restored, children dancing amid newly built plazas, farmland lush with corn, beans, and squash. The broken relics of the city glistened with new paint, and the carved faces on stelae gazed forward into the promise of tomorrow. It was a tapestry of what could be. As the serpent's song faded, Ixchel's breath caught in her throat. Tokaban and Nima stood in. Even the trembling columns settled, as if exhaling relief. Mukuuk lowered its massive head, meeting Ixchel's gaze one last time, and, in that shared stillness, she felt that the serpent had granted its blessing. The green luminescence of its eyes receded, and the enormous reptile curled back upon the altar, drifting into a restful slumber, no longer the fitful sleep of a dormant prophecy, but the tranquil rest of a guardian satisfied with how events had unfolded. Ixchel's tears glistened in the light of the crystal-studded ceiling. She felt the knowledge the serpent had imparted, as though something majestic had brushed her soul. The city's future, she now understood, would not be rebuilt overnight, but it was no longer lost. The choice had been made for healing, not destruction. That opportunity, however, came with great responsibility. They must ensure that compassion and justice reigned in all future leadership decisions so that the serpent's gift did not unravel. The three companions made their way upward again, retracing steps through the winding corridors with exhaustion and awe in equal measure. When they finally emerged from the pyramid's secret entrance, dawn greeted them again, this time with a sky tinted pink and gold. The city lay before them in half-ruined splendor, yet Ixchel could feel its buried heartbeat, newly ignited. The song had filtered through the thick layers of moss and stone, traveling along unseen ley lines under the earth. The jungle, too, after a moment's hush at the serpent's awakening, resumed its vibrant calls. Word spread quickly among the elders of the expedition's success. Shakti, upon hearing the news, walked with careful steps through the city's streets, as though seeing them, and he embraced Ixchel in a rare gesture of gratitude. Though evidently weighed by age, he promised to work tirelessly to unite the scattered farmers, the wandering artisans, and the last pockets of the city's once glorious guard. Together, they would form the cornerstone of a re-emerging empire built upon harmony rather than ambition. Days turned into weeks, and quietly change took root. Workers repaired aqueducts, ensuring clean water once more. The farmland expanded, with new seedlings sown on ground that felt strangely rejuvenated, as if touched by a divine presence. In the ceremonial plazas, renewed reverence for the gods found voice in prayers offered with humility, remembering that gratitude was the truest tribute. Even distant villages, once at odds with the city, ventured back, intrigued by rumors of a magical serpent's healing power. In that sense of common cause, they found a shared identity. Yet, as Ixchel oversaw the careful restoration of manuscripts, she also knew the story of Makok was more than just a chapter in their history. It was an ongoing guardrail, reminding them that power without integrity would warp the serpent's gift. She copied the codex onto fresh pages, preserving every detail she and her companions had learned, adding new lines at the end that documented the serpent's final response. She hoped the future keepers of law would remember that the serpent's blessing was fragile, contingent on humility and careful stewardship. In the evenings, she joined gatherings in the once-abandoned main square, where families lit torches and played drums echoing the heartbeats of the old days. The star-strewn sky seemed more brilliant than ever, perhaps a sign that the serpent's cosmic harmony had momentarily drawn nearer. On some nights, if one listened intently, a faint echo might hover across the rooftops, an echo reminiscent of a soft, resonant hiss or a distant melody. Those who heard it felt reassured, believing the serpent watched from its subterranean chamber. Content with the path the people had chosen, the rumors of the serpent's song spread to other territories. Many found it hard to separate legend from truth. Travelers might arrive, hearing only half-remembered accounts. They saw the city in its transitional state, not quite returned to glory, but no longer doomed to oblivion. And they noted a hum of optimism in every handshake, every exchange of goods. Whispers rose that an empire was in the making once again. The serpent had not just awakened, it had touched the hearts of those who sought it, leaving them with a gentle but monumental calling. Extraordinary gifts demand extraordinary responsibility. And so Ixchel and her people continued their labor day after day. The wide-eyed children listened to new stories of a living prophecy of a jade serpent that granted them a second chance. Lofty hopes danced within them, choreographed by the memory of that cosmic chord. They understood, at least intuitively, that such wondrous power did not come for free. The serpent's voice was woven into the city's destiny, but it was humanity itself that had to choose a path of unity and compassion. In time, the first green sprouts broke through the once fallow fields, promising a bountiful harvest for the first time in a generation. People labored at the ancient temples, patching cracks, polishing weathered carvings, preparing them for future ceremonies free from fear. It became common to see elders instructing the younger ones in the ways of the old gods and the rightful approach to worship, no longer shaped by fear of punishment, but guided by grateful communion with nature and the cosmos. In corners of the city, artisans sat at their craft again, chiseling jade with renewed inspiration, forging symbols of the serpent's voice that might inspire others to keep faith. Each day, Ixchel quietly thanked Mukuk in her heart, devoting her studies to ensuring that the city's rediscovery of spiritual and cultural identity would endure. Sometimes, under the quiet hush of dusk, she would stroll back to the pyramid, stand upon its uppermost steps, and listen. The wind carried the rustling of leaves, the call of monkeys in distant canopies, and the whisper of possibility. If she focused, she could just make out the serpent's distant lullaby, a gentle promise that the city's destiny was once again its own to shape. And so the story passed into memory and song, bridging the realm of myth and reality. The singing serpent's prophecy had come to fruition, not in flames and ruin, but in a gentle chord that could only bloom from humility and mutual respect. At the very root of it all, one unwavering truth had emerged. Power, be it from gods, beasts, or mortal hearts, could only be sustained by a community willing to carry it with integrity. With each passing season, the people shaped their journey anew, drawn by the memory of that day deep in the pyramid when they heard a voice both terrifying and sublime. A voice that, a single note at a time, mended the fractures of an empire poised to rise again.